heard much about you before that this incident happened. And I just don't know what kind of country we're living in when somebody like Lauren can be refused entry under these terms while we are bringing ISIS fighters back from Syria. I believe the figure's about 400 that we know about. That are highly dangerous. And people want to bring them back and give them a council house and benefits and be nice to them so that they don't kill us. And somebody who has no evil intent whatsoever but just wants to exercise free speech is treated like a criminal. And of course what is kind of a semi-comedic about this is they drop you off at Calais. You know, you're a kind of refugee. We don't have many refugees going from Dover to Calais. It's normally the other way around. We have thousands trying to get from Calais to Dover. And we know, in my party, I've just appointed a new Home Affairs spokesman who's an ex-police officer who will tell you that people are landing in boats in the Norfolk coast. The police will not confront them because they know they're armed and dangerous. And people are flooding in. Now, if anybody tries to talk about that, not just that specific, but this whole issue around that, then they, of course, are demonised and called right-wing, etc., and we mustn't talk about it. And the reason we mustn't talk about it is the political establishment and the government are terrified of actually talking and speaking the truth about what is actually going on in our country.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Lauren was actually detained in Calais trying to enter the UK. She travelled from Flanders into Belgium, into France, completely unhindered. And she was speaking at the Vlaams Belang's youth conference, your party's conference.
Yeah, we were very proud and we thank you for it. That she was willing to speak for our youth department, and that's why as soon as we heard that the day after she was held in Calais in these circumstances, we sent out for a car to bring her within France or in the borders of France to Strasbourg, because this was too shameful, not only for the United Kingdom but for European democracies as a whole. And so if this hemicycle and if this parliament is a center of democracy, the case of Lauren and her adventures in the United Kingdom should be here on the table. That's why she's here. That's why we're so glad that she's here and so proud that she's able to express herself freely for the moment within this parliament.
What's interesting, we were having a conversation last night with the Canadian immigration minister, shadow immigration minister, and we were talking about freedom of speech and how the millennials now, really that their eyes are being opened to, they've had this liberal socialist education and their eyes are now being opened to actually what's going on out there. And I know that your youth conference, she had a standing ovation. They were so pleased that, there's somebody in Canada and across actually Europe and across the world.
She should express herself. We had a conference yesterday where I was very happy to hear her explain and I'll ask her to do it herself.
Sure.
How these youth, how these millennials discover now that they have been cheated by the authorities, by the mainstream media.
Yeah, what do you think, Lauren? What's your message to the European youth?
Right, we don't give millennials much of a chance. We kind of reject them as just being silly liberals who just want to watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians and rave all day. But the fact of the matter is that millennials don't reject nationalism or patriotism or conservative ideas because they hate them and they've genuinely thought about them. They've never actually even gotten the opportunity to reject ideas of nationalism because they've never been told them. The media won't interview people who have these opinions, or what happens is the ideas have been defined for them by the mainstream media, who only pick the worst representatives. They pick the worst quotes and they try to make them seem like these scary, awful ideas. And of course, if you took any ideology and only chose the worst representatives of it to present, anyone would reject it. So what needs to happen is we simply need to give an opportunity for millennials to actually hear these ideas in their true and genuine definitions. And once that occurs with the alternative media, as we're seeing rise up in the United Kingdom, and the government is very afraid, which is why I assume bans are happening against alternative journalists, as you've seen with Vlaams Belong, once the youth hear these ideas, they are up in arms. They feel cheated. Exactly what you said. They feel cheated from the futures that they should, the history that they wish they had heard before, the being able to even just love themselves and their country. This is something that gives them a sense of identity and a sense of purpose. And you see so much unity among the Vlaams Belang youth movement, and I believe you will be seeing more of that across Europe as voices like your own speak up and represent them.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you very much.
And let's move on to South Africa. Subject very close to my heart. 2 months ago, we had Corné Mulder, an MP from the Freedom Plus Party, that came to present his thoughts on the election. The election's looming, it's 15 months' time. He predicts not just a Zimbabwe will happen, he actually predicts there's going to be a genocide on the scale of Rwanda. That's frightening. We talked about how we could help. I wrote to Boris Johnson and published my letter, I think, as part of the Commonwealth. We should be helping them. Gerard, what's your views on what's happening in South Africa?
This is about free speech, isn't it? And free speech is also about the media informing people what's going on in a free and fair manner. Now, I've been seeing more about what's going on in South Africa on Twitter than you'll ever see on the BBC or the ITV or Channel 4. And I was appalled to see, I believe it was the Home Affairs Minister in South Africa, and I can't remember his name, saying that they were going to throw white farmers off their land.
Well, he's actually the opposition. That's Julius Malema, who was kicked out of the ANC and has now got his own very frightening Marxist party called the European Economic Freedom Fighters.
Oh, thank you for correcting me on that. But he was saying on this little clip that I saw that they were going to throw farmers off of their land and we were going to kill them, but not yet. Now, if that had been a politician in any European country saying something about black people or brown people, they would be demanding that he's arrested and hauled off to the International Court of The Hague. It doesn't even get reported on the BBC and the mainstream channels because we don't really have free speech in our country. We have what is permitted to be free speech. Now, I abhor violence wherever it comes from, whatever side it comes from. And can I just say a thing about, you were talking about millennials very quick because it ties into this. What's happened in our education system is you've had a relentless 40 years of left-wing propaganda. I don't regard myself as right-wing or left-wing. I regard myself as a patriot who wants to find pragmatic policies that are good for everybody in our country. And I'm very proud to be British, and I think everybody else should be proud of their country. Why not? They've got lots of things to be proud of all around the world.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.